There are words that echo louder than gold, and silences that weigh more than crowns. Before we begin this story, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And if you enjoy stories that touch your heart and make you reflect, subscribe to the channel. There's a new story every day that could change your day. The Abu Dhabi sun melted over the golden domes of the palace like honey on polished marble. Within those walls, adorned with Venetian mirrors and crystal chandeliers, silence had a price, and words, power. On that scorching summer afternoon, Sheikh Khalil al-Rashid was preparing to host what he called the Banquet of Nations, a pompous event where politicians, businessmen, academics, and diplomats from every corner of the globe gathered to celebrate million-dollar contracts, strategic alliances, and, most importantly, the host's own ego. Khalil was known for three things: his incalculable fortune, his collection of rare cars, and his cruel sense of humor. He enjoyed entertaining his guests by mocking them. He imitated accents, caricatured dialects, ridiculed languages, as if they were exotic costumes in a private theater. And everyone laughed. They laughed because they had to. They laughed because a contract depended on it. They laughed because embarrassment in that palace was a currency. Amidst the wide, cool corridors, where the air conditioning chilled to the bone, moved a figure no one saw. Maria das Dores, a middle-aged black woman who had come from a distant country to clean up the messes the rich made. Her calloused hands held a mop, as one might grip an oar in a rough sea, with dignity but also with weariness. She cleaned in silence, avoided glances, moved like a shadow. Her presence was invisible, yet her work essential. And beside her, seated in a discreet corner of the service corridor, was her daughter, Ayana, a 14-year-old girl, thin as an olive branch, with large, attentive eyes that seemed to photograph everything around her. While her mother cleaned, Ayana wrote. She had a faded blue notebook found in the trash of one of the guest rooms, and in it she recorded words in Arabic, French, English, Hindi, Mandarin. Words she overheard as guests conversed in the corridors, words she copied, translated, compared. To her, each language was a secret portal to a different universe. Ayana didn't attend school. Her education was pieced together from fragments: a forgotten book, an overheard conversation, a video watched on her mother's old phone in the early hours of the morning. But her intelligence was razor-sharp. She learned languages not out of ambition, but out of curiosity, the same curiosity that makes birds look at the sky before they fly. That evening, the banquet was set to begin at 8. Maria das Dores had been called in to assist with the extra service. Ayana, as always, would accompany her, sitting in her corner, as invisible as her mother. But fate, that night, had other plans. The palace's main hall was a cathedral of vanity. Tables draped with white linen, fine porcelain plates, crystal glasses that reflected the light of 1,000 candles. Guests arrived in impeccable attire. Italian suits, haute couture dresses, jewelry that sparkled like tiny suns. Each carried an air of calculated importance, as if stepping onto a stage where the audience was power itself. Sheikh Khalil al-Rashid entered last, as befitted a king in his own realm. Tall, with a perfectly trimmed beard, clad in an immaculate white outfit. He smiled at everyone, but his smile held something predatory. He knew that here, in this hall, he was the one who decided who laughed and who cried. Waiters served sophisticated dishes: lamb in pomegranate sauce, saffron rice, exotic fruits dusted with edible gold. Conversations flowed in multiple languages, a sonic mosaic of interests and alliances. But the sheikh had a ritual. After his second glass of wine, he would begin his show. "My dear friends," he said, raising his glass and silencing everyone, "it is an honor to have you here. You have come from so far, from places so interesting." He paused, looking at a British professor seated to his right. For example, dear Professor Whitmore, who came from, where was it again? Ah, yes, Yorkshire. The professor smiled sheepishly. Khalil continued, Yorkshire, what a charming place, where people speak like this. Aye, lad, you ken what I mean, innit? He mimicked the accent grotesquely, dragging out the words, exaggerating the vowels. The hall erupted in uncomfortable laughter. Professor Whitmore forced a smile and downed his glass in one gulp. Khalil didn't stop. He went on to imitate French, Indian, Chinese accents. Each imitation was met with nervous laughter, polite applause, averted gazes. No one dared interrupt him. No one dared challenge him. Then, intoxicated by his own spectacle, he pointed to Maria das Dores, who at that moment was collecting empty plates on a silver tray. Ah, and look, here's our dear Maria, who came from where again? He paused dramatically. From one of those places where they speak so peculiarly. Maria das Dores froze. Her fingers tightened on the tray so hard her knuckles turned white. Khalil began to mimic an African dialect, distorting it, bathing it in mockery. He didn't know exactly what he was saying. He didn't care. To him, it was just entertainment. But to Maria, it was public humiliation. She lowered her eyes, feeling the weight of 50 gazes upon her, feeling exposed, feeling small, and then something happened. From the corner of the hall, where no one was paying attention, a clear, firm, young voice rose. Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. The silence was instantaneous. All eyes turned to the source of that voice. It was Ayana. The 14-year-old girl, the cleaner's daughter, stood there, holding her blue notebook, looking directly at the Sheikh. Khalil frowned. What did you say? Ayana repeated, now with even greater clarity. Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. It's a Zulu proverb, sir. It means a person is a person through other people. In other words, no one is great alone. No one grows by mocking others. The hall plunged into a heavy, dense, almost solid silence. Khalil al-Rashid was not accustomed to being contradicted, much less by a child, much less by the daughter of a maid. He felt something he hadn't experienced in years, surprise, and immediately after, irritation. You, he pointed at Ayana with an accusing finger. Do you know what you just did? Ayana didn't avert her gaze. I merely responded to your imitation, sir. The dialect you attempted to reproduce was isiZulu, but you distorted it. I merely corrected it. A murmur rippled through the hall. Some guests exchanged glances, surprised. Others hid their smiles. Maria das Dores, still standing with the tray in her hands, felt her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Khalil stepped forward. I made a mistake? You think you can correct me? Here, in my home. No, sir, Ayana replied calmly. I didn't correct you. I corrected the language. isiZulu is a beautiful language. It deserves respect. Khalil let out a dry, humorless laugh. Respect? And who are you to talk about respect? A girl who shouldn't even be here. Ayana took a step forward, still holding the blue notebook. I am Maria das Dores' daughter, and while my mother cleaned these halls, I learned. I learned by listening. I learned by respecting. I learned because languages aren't toys, sir. They are the soul of a people. The silence was absolute now. No one dared to breathe too loudly. Khalil crossed his arms. Then show me. Show me what you've learned. Ayana opened the blue notebook. Its pages were filled with notes. Words in Arabic, English, French, Hindi, Mandarin, Swahili, Portuguese. Translated phrases, comparisons between languages, proverbs jotted down in meticulous handwriting. She began to speak, first in classical Arabic, then in French, then in British English, then in Mandarin. Each sentence was perfect, each accent impeccable, each word imbued with truth. The guests, previously uncomfortable, were now gaping. A Chinese diplomat leaned forward impressed. A French businesswoman whispered something to her colleague. The British professor, still smarting from the earlier mockery, smiled for the first time that evening. Khalil, however, felt something different: shame. For the first time in years, he was being exposed, not by a rival, not by an equal, but by a girl, by an invisible child he didn't even know existed. And then Ayana did something unexpected. She recited another proverb, this time in Arabic, looking directly into the Sheikh's eyes. Al-lisan la adma lahu, lakin yahdim al-adham. She paused. The tongue has no bones, but it breaks bones. The impact was immediate. Some guests began to clap, slowly at first, then louder, until the entire hall was erupting in applause, not for the Sheikh, but for the girl. Maid'S, still standing with the tray, felt warm tears stream down her face. They weren't tears of shame. They were tears of pride. Khalil al-Rashid was cornered, not by guards, not by weapons, but by something far more powerful: public truth. There, before 50 witnesses, he had been unmasked. His arrogance, his cruelty, his disrespect, all exposed by a 14-year-old girl armed only with a blue notebook and a sharp tongue. He could have kicked Ayana out. He could have fired Maid'S. He could have ended the banquet and pretended nothing happened. But he knew the damage was done. Those guests, those business people, those diplomats, they would all return to their countries with a story. The story of the Sheikh who was humbled by a child. So Khalil did the only thing left. He tried to recover. "Impressive," he said, forcing a smile. "Truly impressive. You have a rare talent, child. Perhaps I should hire you as an interpreter?" "Yes, that would be useful." Some guests nodded politely, but others remained silent. They knew this wasn't generosity. It was desperation. Ayana, however, did not smile. She closed the blue notebook and looked at the Sheikh with a serene, almost sad expression. "Thank you for the offer, sir, but I don't want to work for someone who laughs at others. I want to learn. I want to see the world, not to exploit it, but to respect it." And then she turned and walked to her mother. She took her hand, and together, mother and daughter, they left the hall. No one tried to stop them. No one dared, because in that moment, the two most invisible women in the palace were the only ones truly seen. In the following days, what happened that night spread like wildfire. Not through the newspapers. Khalil tried to bury the story, but through the guests. One diplomat commented to another, a businessman told a colleague, an academic subtly posted on social media. And so, little by little, the story of the girl who silenced a palace with her words reached the ears of the world. Maid'S was fired, as expected. But something unexpected happened. A university in another country, upon hearing Ayana's story, offered the girl a full scholarship. Not just to study languages, but to live, to grow, to become what she had always had the potential to be. Ayana accepted, but before she left, she returned to the palace one last time, not to clean, not to apologize, but to leave something. She left the blue notebook on the Sheikh's desk with a note. "The words I learned here didn't come from books. They came from people, from the languages you mocked. I'm returning this notebook because it no longer belongs to me. It belongs to all those who were silenced. And now, they have a voice." Khalil read the note alone, in his empty office. And for the first time in many years, he didn't know what to say. 5 years later, Ayana had become a translator for an international organization. She traveled the world, not to impress, but to connect. Connecting people, cultures, stories. Her mother, Maid'S, lived with her now in a small apartment where she no longer had to clean up what others had dirtied. As for Khalil al-Rashid, he continued to host banquets. But something had changed. He no longer imitated accents. He no longer mocked languages, because whenever he looked at the empty hall, he saw that blue notebook. and he remembered the girl's words. The tongue has no bones, but it breaks bones. And he knew there are words that echo louder than gold, and silences that weigh more than crowns. What about you? What did you think of this story? Did it make you reflect on anything? Comment below on your experience. And if you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Every day there's a new story that might touch your heart. Until next time,